Wow, we're starting on time.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. Of course, my name is Todd Cochran. I want to welcome you to the New Media Show. Got a great show lined up for you today. Of course, I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Doing great, Todd. It's great to be here. It's sunny in Seattle as usual. We always have to have our weather report, but it's great to be here talking about new media, and I'm excited about the guest that we have on the show today. She's a real dynamic podcaster, and so it's exciting. So let's go ahead and move on to that.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to welcome. And Marnie, I'm going to have Rob pronounce your last name because if I don't, I'll destroy your last name. But, I'll just let you introduce yourself. Go ahead, Marnie.
That's okay. I destroy it too, to be honest. It's Marnie Kinrys.
Kinrys, okay.
Kinrys, okay.
Yeah, my name is Marnie Kinrys. Yes.
And, of course, you do a show that is very interesting. I was watching some of your videos last night. It's called Marnie's Wing Girl Method. And very interesting. And the fellas that are single in the show, or maybe those of you heading for divorce, may want to watch this show today.
It's for a broad spectrum of men, yes. It's really any man. Oh, God, I hate staring at myself on these things. Any man who wants to understand women better. We offer a female perspective, whether you're in a relationship, you're getting into a relationship, you're dating, you're flirting, you're picking up women, or you've been in a relationship for 20, 30 years and want to reignite that spark or get somebody back that you've lost. So our goal is to provide men with an entertaining and honest female perspective. So I'm the expert on the show because I've been a wing girl for 10 years. And Kristen Carney on our podcast, Ask Women, is the comic relief. But she's actually becoming quite an expert herself after doing this for so long. So it's educational and it's entertaining. It's super fun.
You know, and I got to watch out here because the darts will come flying through the screen for the ladies that are watching this. But I figured women out. Women are pretty simple.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
No, it's easy. They're a sine wave.
Okay.
It's great, it's great, it's great, it's great, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad, it's great, it's great.
Guys are like that too.
You got us. So you nailed us. You nailed it on the head. There you go. I thought you were going to say, I know how to make women happy. All you have to do is just say yes all the time.
No way. It's like...
See, well, I like that. Good, because actually...
I don't know, Marty. I think it helps a little bit to say yes at least 50% of the time.
I would say sometimes it is, but there's more to it. There's a longer explanation to that. Yeah. But I want to talk about podcasting because that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And I will, and here's the funny thing is, and I have a little different perspective too. My wife's Japanese, so and she's actually from Okinawa. She's quite Americanized, so let's not, the typical stereotypical, oh, you got a submissive wife, whatever. Not the case.
No, it's like,
no. But they like men that lead, So, and too many men today are wimps, and they don't. But anyway, that's a whole different story. So yeah,
no, that is the exact story.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So let's talk about your podcast and why you got involved in podcasting. Let's just kind of start at the beginning. Your show is really fast paced. It's got a lot of valuable information for guys to understand women. But go ahead and kind of start. So how did you get involved in? I know you're doing your business of helping guys and stuff like that. So go ahead.
Yes, I've been doing this for over a decade now. It's actually my 10-year anniversary this month of when I started my business, which is crazy to me. But I am the dating expert for the website Ask Men, which is the largest online publication for men's lifestyle. It has like 19 million people coming to their website every month. Anyway, so I do a lot of dating advice and relationship advice videos for them. I'm their expert. And they decided to do this series that was called Ask Women. So they wanted me to be the mediator for them. And so we did these videos, and I was grouped with some women who were absolutely fantastic, and our chemistry together was just amazing. And they were delivering unbelievable advice mixed with entertainment, and I said there's something else here. So either I can utilize it for my business or there's something else here. And I didn't really know about podcasting at that time. I hadn't listened to podcasts. I had one friend that had a podcast of his own, but other than that, I didn't really know anything about it. But Kristen knew a lot about podcasting because she's a comic, and from my understanding, podcasts are mainly ruled by comedians. Those are like some of the biggest shows that are out there. So she knew the team at Adam Carolla, and she contacted a couple of friends over there, and they introduced us to the team at Podcast One. And we pitched our idea of having a show called Ask Women, where it's women telling men what women want. And they quickly said, yes, let's have a meeting. I happen to know Kit as well, who works at Podcast One, personally. So they said, come in. We had a great meeting with them, and then we had a podcast in the next 2 weeks, and we quickly shot up. We're apparently some success story for Podcast One. We had like 30,000 listeners after the first couple of weeks, and then we've just continued to grow and grow and grow, and now we average between 75 and 100,000. Some of our shows have 250,000 downloads, and we've been doing it for about a year, and I've definitely learned a lot about podcasting as I've gone along. It's a very different format to what I was doing before, which was just delivering straight advice to people. But I've learned that, it has to be entertaining, engaging, but people are really coming to get information, and they really start to feel like they know you, and they're a part of a community. So it's a really interesting world, podcasting, and that's my story.
So from being that you guys, when you guys launched, and what are you kind of thinking? The rise and the success of the show is a little, it doesn't always happen that way, and oftentimes it's a battle to get to the top. What do you think what helped you was just having the people that you had on the show?
I'll be honest. I have built up a large business for myself. So I have a database of 70,000 members who are part of my community. And so, them wanting to listen to the podcast was huge. And then that makes it rise up high in iTunes, which makes other people see our podcast. And then Podcast One was also promoting us. So I think all of those things together helped us get to a really high level fairly quickly.
And, it's a topic that it's just the universal question that never dies, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah.
We're trying to figure women out. Things are changing too. The dynamics of what women do, and not only the workplace, the home, everything is, changing. And, look at my generation compared to my kids and everyone else. They're going to have a very different experience with their relationships than probably I did from I guess better words, probably not the right word is execution wise, but maybe that's the right word. But I can see things have changed a lot in the dating scene, and basically the relationship scenes have changed quite a bit. Am I right or am I wrong on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't realize you're posing a question to me. Yeah. Oh,
sorry.
Definitely. That's okay. No, but I would say at the core, the things that have always been important to women and the things that are always important to men that create attraction, that create longevity in relationships, all of those wonderful things are pretty consistent. They may change how they look because of things that are happening in our society, like Tinder or online dating, or the different formats that we use to interact and meet each other. But at the core, it's pretty much the same. We a couple of times we've had David Buss on our show, who talks about the evolution of desire. That's one of his books, and he had done a study of about 10,000 people across 37 different countries, like tribes in Africa and New York City and like all over the world, to find the biological and evolutionary roots of desire and attraction for both men and women. And what it comes down to is that men are attracted to certain things. There's like 3 characteristics. I think, one is looks, one is fertility, and I forget what the third one is. But for women, there's about 18 different attributes that they're attracted to, but at the core of it, the top of it, is that they're attracted to men who bring them closer to resources. That doesn't mean money, it doesn't mean power, but it means attributes like intelligence, drive, passion, commitment to family, social status, social group. Like those things are very important, and those things will always be consistent depending on what happens in our society.
I was telling my son, he's 17, and he's got a girlfriend, and they've been dating for a while. And I was talking to him one day in the car, and I said, "Man, just remember, brains over beauty. Beauty's fantastic, but And he's kind of looking at me kind of funny. He says, "Yeah, that's kind of right," because so often guys just go 100% straight for the looks first, and then it's. Yeah. I've always
listen. It's not bad to go after somebody that visually stimulates you,
right.
You have to be able to get past that, because a lot of men are just satisfied with having something pretty to look at.
Right.
And people always say beauty fades, but it takes a long time for beauty to fade. So it is nice for a very long time, but at the end of the day, if you're looking for partnership and marriage, you have to look for a lot more things.
Yep.
If you want to go through life with somebody successfully. That you're married, so
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and it's that's work in itself. Hey, and I don't want to turn this into a relationship show, but the thing that I see right now, and this is, I think I heard something. I heard it in passing, so I don't want to quote it exactly, but there's some study that was just done that found that there are more. I don't know if it's more single people than married people. There's some dynamic right now in certain age group for the first time ever in the United States, and that was the gist. I don't have the full details, but I see it every day, and a lot of Go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's sorry. There's a little delay, so I'm sorry if I step over you at all. But I think it's fantastic, actually, to be honest. I was watching. I don't know what the study is. But I was watching this documentary that was done through Vice, where it was talking about the Japanese culture, which apparently is extremely sexual. I did not even know this.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody in their 30s, they ask the men and women, "Oh, how come you don't have a relationship? How come you don't have a boyfriend?" And the common response is, "Why would I need a boyfriend? I'm having fun and enjoying myself. A boyfriend or girlfriend would just hold me back." And which is really interesting. And then even my sister, who's 26, she's like, "Why would I want a boyfriend right now? I go out with my friends all the time. I do anything that I want to do." They're loving this independent way of being, and then they're selecting partners at a later age, which I think is really smart. I got married when I was 29. My husband's 10 years older than me, so he got married when he was 39. He's lived his life. He's done what he's wanted to do. And I think that you make better life partner decisions when you are older. And when you're young, I think that you should be enjoying life. I think there's many ways for us to have children now at a later age. So I think that we should be enjoying our lives when we're younger, and we can.
Speaking of Japan, there's a huge issue in Japan right now. They're actually worried about population growth in Japan because of because of the lack of people getting married. So the government's actually putting on these huge events where they're trying to matchmake and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Now, could that happen here in the United States? Maybe. I don't know.
Are they really?
Yeah. Now, they haven't said that here in the U.S., but could it happen with this group? People are okay. So let's say, all right, so you started at 29, your husband's 39. You guys decide, okay, what are we, at that stage, are we going to have 3 kids or are we going to have 1 kid? Because the priorities could change on the number of children you have based upon the age, but that's a whole show within itself. But, one thing, too, that I've seen is that a group of fellas I hang out with, they all started, they all had wives, and now they're my age, and all of them but one are now divorced and single. And I'm thinking to myself, and it must be this. And I see this a lot. There's a lot of older people that are becoming single too. So there's probably a show opportunity for that. That generation, that is now found themselves back on the market.
Yeah, even for me, I've been with my husband for 10 years. We just had a baby. And even though this is what I teach people about, it would be interesting for me to be single again. I don't want to be single again. I love being in a relationship and I love working on a relationship, but it is a challenge 10 years later. It's like, okay, I don't know how to use Tinder and I don't know, but I do because I'm up to date on these things. But for a lot of people who are so out of that loop, it must just be, and I hear it from people all the time, like just how overwhelming it is. But I will say one thing for these people who are getting divorced, in their mid 40s, it's a fantastic time for them. They have an opportunity to then meet and partner up with people who are a much better match for them for the later years of their lives. They can select from a place of knowledge rather than still being 45 and single for that entire period of time. They've been through marriage, they have kids, so they know what they're actually looking for, and they can select based on their needs and wants rather than, I have to have children, I want to have a family. They get to be a little bit more selfish, and they can have a little bit more fun, to be honest.
My mom, I have to laugh because we lost my dad 7 or 8 years ago, and so she started to kind of enter back in the space, and she was using some of the online stuff, and she said, she says, all I'm finding is guys that want a nurse and a purse.
Really?
So just reuse that. So she's 70. So just use that. She says she's finding guys that want a nurse and a purse. So I thought was just so funny.
Well, and plus fewer people are getting married now than I think ever too. I think the percentage of people in the population that are thinking about marriage or getting married is declining. And I think that, what you're talking about, Marnie, really kind of follows that path too. People want to have other experiences, and it doesn't always work. Like Todd is saying, a lot of people are getting divorced. So
yeah, for sure. My other sister, she's been in an 8-year relationship, and she's not married. They don't plan on getting married. They're pregnant now. They just don't want to get married. There's no need to,
right,
I guess, except for tax purposes.
Right.
I mean, he's an accountant and he still doesn't want to get married. So,
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I just don't think that that's a priority for people anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I remember, just thinking back, 20 years. My wife and I will be married 20 years in October, and the process that we went through was pretty traditional. It was like dating for about 2 years, and then the pressure started to build. It was like, it was like, what's going to happen here? You were getting I was getting a little pokes here and there, the hints, and so it actually.
That continues. I got lots of pokes because my husband and I didn't get married until we were together for 5 years. So every time I would go home to Toronto, my family would be like, "So, what's happening?"
Yeah.
And then it puts pressure on you to think, okay, I should be engaged now. Why am I not engaged? I wrote this article for the Huffington Post about me getting engaged. And I think at the 2-year mark, I got really focused on being engaged and why I wasn't engaged, that I forgot to think about why I want to be engaged to this person.
Right.
And so once we got engaged, that's when I started to do my evaluation process of, do I want to be married to this? It was really interesting. I got fixated on the, why doesn't he want me to be his wife?
Right.
That it made me lose track of, do I actually want to be with him forever and have a family with him and go through life? Luckily, I said yes to that. But yeah, it can play with your mind for sure.
My grandmother, who lived to be 100 years old, she told me, she said, it's not what you love about a person, it's what you can put up with.
It's a little cynical, but yeah.
No, they were married 75 years, so it's
That's true.
It's true after a certain point.
Every day, and you see everything about them.
Yeah,
it's true. It's what you can put up with.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also have heard here recently too that there's talk about having more limited time frame marriage licenses that maybe run only like 7 or 10 years.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've heard talk about that kind of stuff because people aren't staying married much longer than that, just in a general sense. But
so they have like an expiry date.
Correct. And if you want to renew it, you can renew it, but it's almost like it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know where I saw that. I saw it in the news somewhere. I think that it was being talked about in like the UK or something, or in Canada or something like
I'm going to
that.
talk about that on our podcast. That's really interesting.
Having been
Yeah.
through one divorce, I could say that would be like that would have been a great option.
Oh, yeah. No, it would
Yeah,
have,
it
because
would
then,
have.
like, you
Yeah.
don't owe money, and you're not tied that
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Because I will say, a lot of people stay in their marriages because they're scared of losing money, they're scared of losing kids, and that's not a reason to stay in a marriage and
Yep.
stay miserable. So I'm all for that. I actually think it's a fantastic idea, and you get to choose whether or not you want to continue being with that person.
That's right. And actually,
Yeah,
it
I
might
love that.
it might keep some people motivated to stay motivated, for a better word.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, are they going to renew?
But to
Can you
loop this
imagine? I'm
back,
sure there's a reality show that's going to be written about that very
Yeah.
shortly.
yeah, to kind of loop this back to
Yeah.
podcasting a little bit, I think what
Yeah.
I don't know, what's really interesting about what Marnie's done here is that she's been kind of a multimedia kind of personality, in her kind of profession here, and doing other media. So she's been on other radio shows, been writing articles. And I think for a lot of podcasters, I think there's a lesson to be learned there. I know I did a lot of the same kind of things, back in the day, back when I did, my own show and my own podcast, was become an expert in what you're doing. I mean, Marnie, you've been doing this for a long time. Is that, a strong kind of piece of advice for any
Yeah.
podcaster that wants to start up, is to become an expert and do multimedia kind of activities?
Oh, for sure. Well, it's funny. So, okay, so a long time ago, my business originally was a service where it would be two wing girls take you out and we pick up women for you.
Mhm.
I quickly learned that doesn't make you very much money. It's a pain to handle and manage, because you have these other girls who you can't really control. And I was here on a visa at the time because I'm Canadian, so I could have legally gotten into a lot of trouble doing that service. And then I discovered the world of online marketing, and I discovered how to sell products to people and teach people all around the world how to attract women, pick up women, and also how to make money online, which was a huge thing. So that I didn't have to do a live service anymore. And so I started moving my business to online rather than in person. And then I became a part of a really large online marketing community in the dating niche. And I've always called myself an online marketer as well as a dating and relationship expert. But the people in this group are like ridiculous in online marketing. They are experts. I'm like a level 6. They're like a level 20. I utilize the tools, but not nearly as well as they do. And that ate away at my confidence as a business owner for some time, because I was always trying to do what they were doing and thinking that if I can't do what they're doing, then I'm a failure. And it, again, ate away at my confidence, and I spent countless hours trying to create video sales letters and write selling copy that gets people to instantly click on a buy now button and want to buy my product so that they can, consume them within. Anyway, this is like online marketing talk. Once I realized that I could use other sources for driving traffic to my site and getting people to want to be a part of my community and want to buy products from me and help me earn a living so I can still continue doing this. And I could actually use my strong skill set of being in the media and having a personality that resonates well in the media. That's when I started to really succeed in my business and in business. So yes, if you have the person, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but if you know that you can be in the media and that you have great information to share and you're good at interviews and you can talk to people, if that's your skill set, that's what you should be using to market yourself. I don't think that it's for everybody, and you can always find another spokesperson for your brand if you're not able to do that as well as other people can do it. But once I let go of I have to do what everybody else is doing, even though I'm horrible at it and I hate it, and I started to own, I'm really good at this, I'm going to do more of it, that's when I saw my business take off. And now it's a very successful business. I make a very nice living and I'm happy, and I get to help men all over the world, and I get to be in the media all the time, which is like, honestly, what turns me on and gets me out of bed in the morning. So I've created a business where I get to be satisfied and happy every single day and not feel like I'm less than, which is pretty amazing.
This is an interesting topic, and I have to be careful here because there's some stuff happening in the podcasting space right now, and Rob's going to know where I'm going here. That there are individuals that are selling these marketing methods, and there's a lot of hype. I think there's some substance, but did you feel when you were kind of to the left a little bit, looking back, and when you were in a space where you weren't happy? Was it the marketing folks that were pushing these methods was that what was driving you crazy? Was that impacting you from a...
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because
For sure. So there's, in my world, it's you have to have a video sales letter that converts at 1.5 EPC or else affiliates won't promote it. And if you don't sell people instantly, then you're a failure. And yeah. It never felt right to me. Not that like I thought it was scumbaggy or too salesy. Just all of these, even though the promises that I was making were promises that I actually could deliver on, it felt wrong. I don't think I would do that in conversation with somebody.
Right.
I wouldn't tell them about how instantly you're going to turn on women by doing absolutely nothing, and this magic bullet is going to make you feel like the most powerful man in the world, and your penis is huge. Like, it never felt comfortable to me to do. So yeah, that it was a big push and pull for me. It's, do I do this or do I not do this? And for a long time, I tried to do it and to keep up. This is the biggest thing that I've learned in my marketing. Every avenue is an avenue to expose yourself to a greater audience. So when I decided to write a book and self-publish it and put it on Amazon, because I have a large membership, I was able to get my book to a high level on Amazon. I was #1 in several categories for numerous weeks, and I was able to expose myself to lots of other people because of that. And the book, yes, it'll make me some money, which is nice, but more importantly, I saw it as an advertising tool.
Right.
It validated me, and then throughout that book, I sprinkled links in it so that they can find out more information about me, and that leads them back to my website so they can sign up for my newsletters or buy products, whatever, or do coaching with me, whatever it is. Same thing with podcasting. I don't think that I'm going to become a millionaire overnight by doing podcasts. But it's fun for me. It keeps the content fresh for me. It keeps me interacting with people. I have a blast doing it because I love Kristen. It helps build my community, and it validates me to my audience and new audiences that find me. And then I remind them about my website all the time. So I've always been happier with the soft sell and the slow build rather than the instant sell and disappointment on the back end.
I'm going to tell you, man, you're singing the right song here because, this is, Rob and I, we can go into this for hours because it's true, and I get these calls, and on my side of the podcasting business, I work with, full spectrum, small shows to big shows, and it's always about the, because people are focused about the numbers and, relatively unknown people that didn't have an online presence before, and they're expecting immediate success. And I'm like, no. This is a long haul. You got to get out there, get exposed, build your rep, be in the community, do your thing, and build. It takes time, and we're such an instant gratification society these days that. Building it the way I built my show is is that opportunity doesn't exist anymore. I was lucky when I started building my show. There was less than 100 podcasters in the space. It was new, it was exciting, it was fresh, it was tech.
Really?
The techies could hook up easy. It wasn't complicated for them. They could do the steps needed to connect with the show. And my personal show that I do, skyrocketed immediately. And I was I was a bad blogger. I'm still not a great blogger, but I feel like I'm a great podcaster. But the blogging and all the extra stuff that I do in the space now obviously builds that rep. So I understand completely where you're coming from here. And I think there's some lessons learned there for people that are, it's great to have advice and great to have coaches, but you got to do the grind. You're not going to get away without doing the grind.
Well, it's funny. So I love Howard Stern. Like, this is a new thing for me to be listening to Howard Stern, because I just got a new car like a year ago, and they give you free Sirius for 3 months. I got hooked on Howard Stern. But recently he's been doing a lot of tributes to Joan Rivers, because she was huge for their show, and I myself loved Joan Rivers. But mainly what he's been talking about in the interviews that they have with Joan Rivers that they've been airing, talk about the grind for her, and that it wasn't like instant success, and she had ups and downs, and she worked her ass off to build up an empire that really only came to fruition later in life for her. In her 30s and 40s, she was having a very hard time, and she was struggling to get any recognition whatsoever. And then, now we see her, or saw her, as having this unbelievable, successful career where she's working around the clock and doing all of these different things. But I think you're right. Like, most people think that, okay, if I haven't made it in 3 months, then this isn't working, and that I should just stop doing what I'm doing and try doing something else. And they don't realize that things require work and effort and time, and you can't just be like, I have a sparkling personality, so obviously people are going to flock to me and want to watch me. As you said, when you started, there was only 100 podcasts. Now there's, like, I'm sure thousands of podcasts. There's so many options out there for people. It's going to take them a while to find you if you're just sitting at home doing your podcast and not really doing any other type of outreach to let people know you exist. And that actually, it goes hand in hand with the dating world, because I always say to people, if you're expecting to meet the love of your life or a person for an evening, and you're sitting at home watching American Idol expecting that person to come knocking on your door, the only person that's going to come to your door is the FedEx delivery woman. And maybe you'll have a connection, but if you don't, you're kind of screwing yourself. Like, you're not going to meet anybody sitting on your couch. You have to put yourself out there at least once a week, maybe even twice a week. Get off your couch and go interact with people. So it's funny that what you're saying about this new mentality for people, it goes across multiple platforms.
Got to kiss 100 frogs before you can find a prince.
Yeah,
I think
some people get lucky. Some people do get lucky, but you have to get outside your house in order to get lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a tendency now, and I think a lot of people with their smartphones just think that they can just be online all the time, and that's their social interaction. And I think it's a danger zone that a lot of people fall into, and I think I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's about building kind of being in a lot of different places. I mean, I'm sure you'd be a perfect guest for Mr. Howard Stern at some point too, and that would be a great thing for your
dream. It's my dream.
Yeah, exactly. But that would really give you a boost for your podcast and your brand and all that stuff to be on a show like that. So I think, shooting for that kind of thing, of being on other podcasts and being in other media on TV or radio and making that part of your goals, and striving for that, I think is
well. That's
really
one
important.
thing I learned very quickly. I say yes to every interview that's offered to me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry for going over you. But yeah, I say yes to every interview. And I actually, very early on, I hired a publicist, because I when I started my business, I was actually working in PR. I hated it. And the day after I started my business, I went into my office the next day and I downloaded my media list. I stole it from the PR company that I was working with and started pitching myself out. And I then started to like PR because I was like, oh, now I like the product that I'm pitching. And now I see the results that it's getting. And within the first 2 weeks of starting my business, I was on the Kevin and Bean show. I had an article about to be written on me in the LA Times. I was in a whole bunch of smaller publications. I was on hold for Jimmy Kimmel. There was like a whole bunch of different things that I was doing. And I realized that the power of the media, and there was like really small magazines that were saying they wanted to write something about me. There were like larger radio shows. And I said yes to everything. And I've always said yes to everything because if I do a podcast that has 10 listeners, 2 of those listeners could fall in love with what I'm doing and really need my services and go to my website and buy my products. And it keeps me fresh with my material and talking to other people and exposing myself. And who knows who they are? They could be, the booker for the Howard Stern show and say, oh, I heard this great girl on this small podcast that I listened to. Let's have her on the show. So saying yes to everything has been my motto in dating and in business.
And this may not be a complete related analogy here, but when I was younger, I'm not endowed with a lot of great looks. I'm just an average guy from the looks department, and I was before I got older, I was on the skinny side, believe it or not. But I never had problems. But I never had problems in the dating scene, and never, quite successful in the dating scene. And ended up with
I wouldn't think so. You're very confident.
Absolute, fantastic, beautiful, smart woman as a wife. Everything, cannot complain. So when you put yourself out there, and people always say, hey, okay, guys are like, how do you do it? I'm getting this they're like, there goes Todd again. It would piss them off because I was having great success in the dating scene. And I'm like, you just got to open your mouth. You got to say hi. You got to say hello and engage and have a conversation.
Exactly. And number one pickup line, hi.
It's pretty simple, isn't it?
A story I love to tell. I walked into this place one time as where I grew up, and it was a club, and there's this beautiful, beautiful woman sitting in the corner, and I can tell just by the way she's holding herself, class act. That's let's go talk to her immediately, right? And everyone was scared to talk to her. And long story short, out the door we went. But it does. That's the thing is, guys and podcasters, you need to, and it kind of crosses over. You got to put yourself out there.
Yes.
If you don't,
there's similar things. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah.
And it's scary. And it's scary to ask for help. So
yeah.
I have actually right now I have a launch that I'm doing for my first ever women's product. It's called That's Not How Men Work. And because I'm not as confident in the online marketing space, I teamed up with another person from my marketing group who's loved by everybody in terms of his marketing. They always know he's going to deliver. I teamed up with him because I know I deliver really great content, and he delivers amazing marketing. So we're launching this product together. And I had him announce it in our marketing group. And, this one guy called me up yesterday and said, he's like, Marnie, why didn't you call me and ask me if I would help with your launch? He's like, are we okay? And I was like, oh my God, we're totally fine. I'm like, you know that I'm weird with that stuff. I'd rather it come from Mark so that you can feel good about sending your traffic over to me, but we're totally fine. And plus I've had a baby recently, so I've sort of, pulled back on the networking a little bit. But even I still get shy in certain spaces where I don't feel as confident, like when it comes to affiliates and being able to say, if you send your traffic over to me, I'm going to be able to guarantee money. It's hard to ask people to do something for you if you don't know for sure that you're going to deliver. So I get that completely. For anybody who's afraid to go out there and ask a woman out on a date, ask a man out on a date, ask somebody to be on their podcast or vice versa, it is challenging. But no matter what, if you want to be successful in a certain area, you have to push past the discomfort and just do it.
And it's kind of a related type thing. Is early on, I understood the value of the networking in the podcasting space. So I would promote every show that I liked, I would just tell, hey, I've heard this great show, da da da
That's
da.
awesome.
And then I would send that person an email and say, hey, at 19 minutes or whatever, I talked about your show. And
That's smart.
and not asking for an exchange.
No.
Well, you have to give value first before you're going to get value.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
idea.
and if they decided they wanted to talk about my show, great. If they didn't, great. But that was huge.
Smart.
So many people are afraid to send. If someone's listening to my show and I like someone else's show, my audience is going to like that show too. Just because we're all the same, we're all clicking together, right? So, and I be honest with you, I'm probably something I've neglected to do over the last couple of years is promote other shows more. But it is
promoting the Ask Women podcast. You can start there.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, but that's actually very smart.
Yeah.
Because you're also appreciating other people who are doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's genuine and real, and I think that's amazing. It's not even like a smart business tactic. It's a wonderful thing to do, and if it comes back full circle, then that's even better.
And there's probably some stuff that you've seen on, basically, let's look at the affiliate side. You're like, you're kind of like, nope. I'm not going to promote that because you got to protect your brand, protect your reputation. At all costs.
Well, there's certain things because there's certain marketers who are in my circle who they're like, we'll promote anything, and I'm like, no, my audience is really important to me.
Right.
I'm not going to show them crap. I'm going to show them things that I endorse, a program that I've gone through myself that I know will work, that is of the highest integrity. Yeah. Because people would tell me in the past, oh, just promote this. I was like, no, it does not work like that. I'll lose people.
Yeah.
They won't trust me anymore.
Right. And listeners can smell out something very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Rob?
For sure.
Marnie,
I'm so sorry, but I had told Rob before, I do have to go a little bit earlier. I know your show is longer. I apologize, but I have a baby to feed. So
okay.
I'm so sorry.
Rob, did you have one last question for her before?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, just really, really quick, if Marnie, if you could explain a little bit, just for a minute or two, about the evolution of your podcast and the show content, that, and how you've had to kind of refine that. I mean, over the last few months, and what's worked for you, and you've created like segments in your show. You've created kind of fun topics in there. And try to really engage with people. If you could talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So initially we started off with 4 women, which we quickly realized was no good. It was too many voices. We didn't have the right women on the show. There was one girl at first who was kind of crazy who sort of dominated the show. So we got rid of her very fast. And then we started bringing our producer in a lot more to be our voice of man, to make sure that we didn't get to estrogen on the show. So we had somebody to sort of balance us out. And then slowly over time, after another few months, we got rid of another girl who was on the show who didn't really want to share anything about herself because she came from a very religious background and didn't want to be open. And podcasting is about being open and sharing your life and opinions. And so that wasn't really very helpful. So it ended up being Kristen and I as the key women on the show. And now what we have is like a rotating voice of man. So different men come onto our show as our voice of man in the first half of the show. And we have a segment called The Chapter in the Man's Playbook where we discuss a topic, the friend zone, or why men cheat, why women cheat, how to reignite that relationship. So it's like a chapter in the man's playbook. And then the second half of the show, we typically have a guest on, preferably a woman, because we like hearing from women about what women want, where we interview them and about whatever they want to promote. And then we do a segment called Analyze This, where we have, or overanalyze this because we talk forever. And we have people writing questions and we answer the questions. So in the very beginning, we didn't have segments. And so it was very loose and we didn't really know where to start things or stop things. And then our producer helps us by telling us that we need to create some segments for the show so that there's some structure and things that people can rely on hearing, that they look forward to hearing either every episode or every other episode. But the one thing that I would like to do better is do better research or have a producer who does better research and provides me with articles that I can talk about. Our show isn't that big where we're going to have somebody else doing it for us, so it's on my shoulders to do. I try and keep as up to date on the dating world as possible, but I have to be better at it so that we have more things that are new in the media to discuss at the top end of the show.
Very, very cool.
That's great.
Well, there's two places. We spent too long at the beginning on the other topic, Rob. Apologize, but
No, I think we covered good stuff here. It's great.
So, Marnie, basically, folks can find you really two places I see right now. You can find you on AskWomenPodcast.com and get subscribed to the show over there. And then, of course, also the WingGirlMethod.com, where it sounds like you single fellows out there, you may want to check out Marnie's marketing material and what she can do for you in the space if you're struggling there. So very, very cool. I'm glad we got a chance to chit chat. I'd love to see more women, and Rob and I have been trying to highlight women in the space that are doing great, and you're a prime example of this. So really exciting.
Yeah.
We need more.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm so sorry that I have to leave.
No worries.
That's the downfall of being a woman. You have breasts, and that's what kids need to eat from. So
and we need more estrogen in the podcasting space. So
and I think Todd, we're actually getting it in spades. So I think it's fantastic. And Marnie's a wonderful example of the energy that comes from that. Yeah. So I think it's great.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Marnie,
well, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry to cut it short, but this was fun. Enjoy Hawaii, enjoy Seattle, and come into the studio next time to say hi to me.
Yeah,
I will, Marty.
And take care of baby. And we could have been a guest for. We could have been a breastfeeding. How should we say it? Acceptable show. Yeah, we could.
Okay, well, goodbye, guys.
All right, take care.
Saturday.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Marnie.
Oh, gosh. Well, I was trying to say that there's, restaurants sometimes now are saying, no breastfeeding here. I'm like, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Feed the kid.
That's right. This is a place where people eat. So, all right.
Oh, man. Well, it's been it feels to me this week's been just insane, Rob, from just my whole schedule standpoint. It's just like the space is on fire right now.
It is. I agree with you.
There's
lots of great content coming into the space right now. It's just incredible.
I'm curious to see I know that Norm talked to the gal from Washington Post. She talked to me too. So I'm curious to see how that article is going to turn out. And I don't know if it's going to come out this weekend or if it's going to be next week. So you spent about, almost an hour on the phone with her. And
that's great.
A lot of questions. And then Thursday night, I was at an interesting event here in Honolulu. Basically, there was some folks in from the mainland, and they were meeting with groups, and spent about 2 hours with some pretty high-profile folks from the Valley, and had a great discussion with them. And it's an interesting time, and I don't know. I'm having a hard time putting my finger on what's driving it, but it's as long as it's happening, it's all good. And what I'm referring to, for those of you, and not trying to talk cryptic, but the business space is definitely warming up in a significant way.
Yeah, and I thought that the announcements done by Apple this week were really interesting too. And it's still a little unclear how that new watch could affect the podcasting space. I'm going to try and get some clarity on that. Here at some point, I'm going to be meeting with the Apple folks and get some idea on what the capabilities are of that watch to work with podcasts somehow. I'm not quite sure how.
Yeah, I don't know either. But one thing we do know, that Apple's been having some trouble, especially in their updating department in iTunes. It's been
that's kind of an ongoing thing that's been up and down for them, I've noticed as well.
Yeah. So it's been worse the last couple of weeks, and we were reaching out to them and talking to them, and they're not making a statement per se, but If there's any podcasters out there that are having their shows not updated on iTunes, you need to email them at podcast@apple.com, podcast with an S. Mm-hmm. And just and as I've said in the show before, name the show, RSS feed, your iTunes link, and be nice in the email, and they'll answer your and they're looking into it. They want to know from folks that are, and if you publish on your show and it hasn't updated in iTunes 15 minutes later, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking like 4 or 5 hours later. Yeah. If it hasn't updated, then it's generally, if you're on a schedule and you're basically publishing your show at the same time every time, generally Apple will update within about 4 hours of your normal publishing time. But there's people that are going a week right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we all need to step back and realize what the scale that those guys are trying to handle too. It's not an easy thing, being running an aggregator myself for many years. It's not always 100% to expect things to go smoothly with that many RSS feeds that are updating in different schedules for the servers to be able to get to all that.
And I think some people are being greedy too. Some people are including all 200, putting up to 299 episodes in a feed. Yeah. And do you really need all 299 episodes in the feed? It's insane to think people will, people are going to go back and listen to show number 1. Good luck with that. Maybe the last 50, but some people are hell bent on having all 299 episodes. And if you're using PowerPress, please use Feed Maximizer for anything beyond like the first 10. That'll help get your feed size down. But it's not just iTunes is having trouble across the board, and it's all providers. So it's one provider can't say na because you're using this, your feed staying updated. It's not the case. So
given that, so let's say a podcaster's had 299 episodes and they're about to go 300. How do they handle that? Just make those episodes available on their website only, and just have like a limited 50 episodes in their actual feed. And I think there's a lot of ways you can go about handling that. And I know some will put their archives behind a paywall. So it kind of goes the full spectrum.
Or they make an archive category and put them in an archive category, and have a new RSS
and
feed.
Create a separate feed for your last 200 plus episodes.
I wouldn't want 3 or 4 listings for this show on iTunes either. So iTunes is depreciated keywords, and it's strictly now. And matter of fact, it's some of the stuff we're going to introduce in PowerPress 6 is we're going to help with SEO for folks on iTunes because we've learned some tricks and basically going to help them out get to be able to get better placement from a search site. The main thing is that they can find your show in iTunes by searching your title. The title of your show has to really be well defined. So defined and also your subtitle too. Your the one-liner that you're limited to X number of characters. So have 2 of those in each episode as well. But it's very, very hard to find an individual episode on iTunes.
Yeah, and I've also really, since I've been in the space of having apps cross-platform that I manage, I've noticed a huge difference between Android and Apple's App Store kind of publishing policy for updates.
Yeah.
It can take, up to a week and a half to get an app pushed out through Apple's platform, and it's like 24 hours on the Play Store for Google. It's really amazing difference.
It used to be months on Apple because they were so backlogged, in the very beginning.
And I think with the coming update to the iOS 8, there probably is a backlog, and a lot of app developers have been trying to ramp up for that, I think. And so there is a backlog right now. I've been trying to push an update to the Podcast One app, and it's just taking forever to make it through there. And they say 5 to 7 days, but I think I'm beyond 7 days now.
Well, at least that's on the app side. It's definitely not necessarily on the It's at least the apps are updating, on a regular basis. But it's fully on the iTunes side is specifically the updating of the shows.
Yeah,
two different issues.
Yeah, as far as on the podcasting side, I mean, those guys are, they're the epicenter of this space. I mean, it's what they do does have an impact on podcasters in this space, as we all know.
Yeah, we've been experimenting with indexing 100,000 plus shows, and it's definitely an interesting. And it's not necessarily hard. You just have to learn timing settings and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a show takes a second to load, and the next show takes 10 seconds to load, and you're trying to index 100,000 episodes or 100,000 shows, that you typically will take that guy that took 10 seconds to load, and you may put him at a lower update rate from the guy that's updating every second, or the page will load in a second, so.
Well, and if you're trying to manage a huge catalog of podcast feeds, there's a lot of things that, a person wouldn't normally think of as factors you have to think about too. Because, I mean, if you're trying to parse and cache all of the metadata in that feed,
right.
the items in the feed or the episodes, and then constantly be looking for updates to cover art and series descriptions.
Yep.
I mean, if you're trying to do that on a regular basis, you could get into a situation, and I tried to architect one of these a while back, and had to really think about these things, but tried to work with the Microsoft folks to build a new parser, and that you don't want the server to work too fast either, because
right.
then you could set up a situation where that the source for the podcast feed could think that they're under a DOS attack.
Right.
So you have to kind of walk very carefully in being able to understand what the frequency of updates of the RSS feed have been in the past, store that data, and then base that as is when you actually ping that feed. So that's another factor of why it's really important for podcasters to stick to a regular schedule.
Absolutely. And that's why, if you're on a regular schedule, that's why Apple will generally pick your show up within 4 hours of it being published. And if you're not on a regular schedule, well, good luck. Yeah. And, it's, it's pretty interesting to watch the scale, because, when you're dealing with that number of feeds, you just got to put more resources at it, because if you don't, it's not something a single machine is going to do. And this is what worries me about the API over at iTunes. If you have someone out there writes bad code, and there's some people that are pulling, some people are feeding their podcast apps from iTunes. Mm-hmm. And if you get a little over aggressive as a developer, you could end up on a bad boy list, and all of a sudden you aren't getting your app isn't updating anymore. So people have to be careful on how they implement stuff when they're trying to integrate or trying to talk to iTunes too.
Yeah, and the podcast catalog that I worked on, with Zune for many years, is that podcast catalog is still active, and it's being used by third-party apps. The APIs were tapped into. And there's like probably a half dozen apps out there that are third-party apps that are using the Zune APIs right now.
So what happens when they pull the plug on that? Those guys are screwed.
Yeah, there's no date on when the Zune software is going to get taken down. I thought it was going to probably get taken down by now, but they haven't done it. And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not really looking forward to that, because I still use that software to watch podcasts, because I just, I'm so familiar with it.
Is anybody adding anything over there? There's no one doing anything now?
No. They hired a woman, her name is Whitney, who's been, I talk to them on a regular basis. They ask me, I get an email from them probably once a week on some topic that they're trying to have something, a question answered. And it really gets back to, there really wasn't anybody else that understood the tools and understood the platform at the level that I did.
Well, I hope you charge them a consult every time they call you.
Well, they're usually really quick emails, and I just quickly write them back and just say, yeah, this and this and this, and I tell them who, what to do and things like that. But yeah, it'd be nice to have that. But I also, I don't want to engage too much at this point.
Right.
I just want to help. But I still get a lot of people that actually will on Twitter or via email will send me a request. How can I get on Windows Phone and and the new Windows Phone app that's out there too? And actually, I think I linked. If you go to Rob at Rob Greenlee on my Twitter account, I have a link from this past week that I put up that goes to a page that talks about how to submit your podcast to the app, the new app for Windows Phone, and then also Zune too. So, but anyway.
But if you were in the old one, you're still in the one, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally still operational. It's, I think that the Xbox folks wanted to take that thing down a long time ago, and it's been like the slowest death that I've ever seen of any platform. I think they've wanted to take it down, but it's just like either they just haven't gotten around to it, or they just have completely forgotten about it. I don't know. I don't know which one it is. But.
Oh, so there's actually a thread now on Microsoft on answers.microsoft.com. That's good. I'm glad you put that in there because I'll send that over to my team and we can add that to our FAQ too. So
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. So there is activity with podcasts at Microsoft, but it's certainly not like it used to be.
Right.
And I've still been trying to think about how I might approach Google to kind of inspire those guys to, do something in this space.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've had any contact with them or not.
That's a tough nut to crack. It's too bad, really.
Yeah.
So let me see. Let me make sure I send this off before I forget.
Because I think Stitcher right now is probably the most popular podcasting app on Android, right?
Yeah, Beyond Pod might be close.
Beyond Pod? Okay.
Yeah.
Those two?
Yeah. They run neck and neck percentage-wise, I think. Mm-hmm. And there's a few others. And I was, when I had an Android phone and I was testing that one, I was using all the apps. Now I'm basically using my tablet, and I'm basically have every podcasting app known to Android loaded on my device now just to see how well they work. And boy, I tell you, a lot of implementations out there that are a little hokey, for sure. A lot of, I guess, in other words, a lot of, there's also a lot, how should we say it, a lot of agendas in those apps based on who they have listed and how they have them listed. I'm like, oh, I wonder if this person has an involvement in this app or paying to be at the top. It's kind of, it just makes me go, a little bit, but 'tis what it is.
So let's talk a little bit about our guest today, Marnie.
Yeah.
What's your kind of bigger impression of I think she's a really good example of what more podcasters should do. But I don't know. What's your thoughts?
I think she came from a space where she was, a big part of this online marketing world, and and she was successful at it. So it's interesting to see her having been successful in that space and then coming into this space. And that's to me is kind of like a little bit of like a moment because usually it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But maybe not. There's some, I've seen.
Well, I think if you build kind of a community in really any form, and I think that's what we need to think back on. I mean, a little bit, and maybe kind of recalibrate our conversation on this topic. But people build communities for a lot of reasons, and there's usually trying to drive value. I think where we object to it is the flaunting of fast money, right?
Yeah, fast money.
Finding success overnight almost is kind of the expectation that a lot of these folks set, and I think that's where you get into the unrealistic kind of area here, and I don't think Marnie fits into that. I think she's has been very skeptical of a lot of that stuff, and I think a lot of others feel that way too. But people want to learn on how to do this stuff, and I've thought about inviting on a couple others that are like doing podcasting seminars and things like that to talk about that, and I think I'm going to probably try and pursue that a little bit. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it'd be good because it's going to make for an interesting conversation, depending on who it is.
Yeah, and trying to drill down on what kind of advice they're actually giving out there too, I think is without offending them, but to try and understand what's being told to the community out there, I think is a big part of what our purpose is. I mean, you and I have been in this space for a long time, and we've been always tried to be purveyors of quality information, and not hype.
Right. And there's just this, I think it was yesterday, someone was talking about, in one of the podcasting forums, was talking about a little bit freaked out that he had just come off New and Noteworthy. And, the sky's falling, what's going to happen now? And I basically kind of chimed in. I was never on New and Noteworthy because it didn't exist when I started podcasting. There was no iTunes, and I keep using this term, life after iTunes. And as much as iTunes is important to the space, and I'm not discounting that, and Apple and their contribution, I'm also saying that it's not the only platform you should be looking at. So, it's basically goes down to some of the same tenets she was talking about of owning her brand. That came through. She wants people to come back to her website no matter where she's found. So there's a direct relation there in syndication. So I'm a big syndicator. I syndicate this show everywhere. Syndicate my other podcast everywhere. But ultimately, we want them to come back to newmediashow.com. Second thing is the engagement with the community and the audience, respecting the audience and all that stuff, that goes. So, as I try to impair this with this person on Facebook, it ended up being this 4-paragraph post that I was typing on my iPad as I'm sitting in the back seat of the car as my son's driving us home last night. And people are so focused on one thing, got to get there, and and I'm not saying this person used those tactics at all, but some people are using nefarious tactics to get in New and Noteworthy. And if you're using tactics to get into New and Noteworthy, that means maybe your show isn't so noteworthy. And
that's true.
Do I want to get to New and Noteworthy through my listeners, or do I want to get to New and Noteworthy through a bunch of podcasters that have teamed up to like my show and subscribe and do a bunch of tactics to get there? It's going to be a short, and one person in that thread said, well, my show fell off. I immediately fell off and lost listeners. Well, why did you lose listeners? Well, maybe you weren't focused on the content. What it always comes back to, right?
Yeah, and I think the big thing is you can grow a show big and not have a bunch of features on iTunes.
Right.
So I think that there's this perception that being featured in iTunes is the key, and I don't necessarily believe that's the case. I think it's a supplemental thing. And I work really closely with the Apple folks, and I know you do too, but they have certain tenets that they look for, and they're pretty strict about it, about what they do around what's featured and what's in New and Noteworthy and how they find those things. And I mean, I'm lucky that I can reach out directly to them and suggest those kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it's their choice. It's their platform. It's the same thing I went through running the Zune podcast areas. That I had to be concerned about featuring shows that were going to drive attention to the platform.
Right.
So that's what you always need to think about when you're thinking that you're trying to get in iTunes. It's not necessarily about you and your podcast. It's about what your podcast brings to Apple.
Yeah.
So, and putting that kind of blinder on a little bit kind of changes your your approach. You know, you need to make sure that your cover art's really compelling. You know, you need to have your show sounding really good. You need to just do all the basics and start building an audience outside of iTunes, and doing like things that you've talked about. That's what gets you featured and in New and Noteworthy in a prominent position. I mean, it's great to get to be in New and Noteworthy, but that New and Noteworthy area's got like 100 podcasts in it. So, you know, unless you're at the top of that list, it's probably not going to drive a lot of benefit to you.
Yeah, and it's especially if you're in a category of New and Noteworthy.
Yeah.
And speaking of album art,
yeah, that's right.
And
that's
we got this done at Fiverr, folks, over at fiverr.com. I had a number of iterations done, and I had to bring those up and show people some of the stuff that was created over at Fiverr. Let me see if I can find this real quick. I know where it's at. And, you know, some of it was better than others. And, you know, you get what you pay for. I showed some of the stuff that I had done for Geek News Central to Brian, and Brian said, frankly, I'm insulted. And let's see here. Yeah, let me bring these up. So here's some stuff I had done at Fiverr. This is one that we came up with for the Gadget Professor. This one I think is one of the better ones. Mm-hmm. And then some and I actually kind of like that one too.
So for those that are listening here, we're looking at a bunch of art that was created for Geek News Central and for the various shows, you know, a lot of, you know, graphic ideas.
Yeah, I kind of like this one. This one wasn't bad. Not fantastic, but you know. So I'm not in. What I'll do is I'll use some of these in ID3 tags. I'll basically I just drop them in the media once in a while. Mm-hmm. So not bad from that's a new one you haven't seen. That one came in. So, you know, it's anyway, that's it.
So let's go back to the one that we're using right now. I don't know if you want to or not.
Yeah, let me go ahead and
So I think one thing I sent you an email about our new artwork is right down that lower red area. It'd be great to have like bolded kind of white letters that says audio and video for each of our feeds. But
oh yeah, it might be interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I paid for the PSDs on this one or not. I'll have to look. I think maybe I did.
Did you?
Yes, okay. I might be able to do that. So put what there? Put the feed or put the?
No. Make two separate copies of that art.
Yeah.
One that says audio and one that says video, and then just put those into each of the feeds.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask about that was, what was the process and what was the cost and the relationship and things like that you had to create with the, was it
with
Fiverr?
Fiverr.
Yeah.
So just went over their website and I kind of, looked in their graphics section. There was, 3 or 4 people in there that said that they would create podcast art. And I said, okay. And I sent them the old graphic and I said, here's what we're using me for. I'm just going to let you go for it. Go ahead and knock yourself out and come up with some stuff. And that was the direction. I said, I want you to put the new media show as the title. And actually, I think I said new media show. The only thing that maybe is a little bit of a screw up is they put but it doesn't matter. I think it's the new media show is fine. And basically waited a couple days and got stuff back. And I think paid $5 for the basic.
$5. Wow.
And I paid an extra $5 for 4 copies, and maybe total I got $20 in it because I wanted the PSDs. That's the master files, and you can't even $20, please. It's like if it turned out bad, all right, I wasn't even going to use it, but I got some choices. And I'll probably do a few more experiments. It's a great way to get cheap album art. And I know the graphics developers here in the United States that make a living doing this are like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. But they are. But it was somebody that was overseas, obviously, that did it.
So is that $5 for each version of the cover art?
Well, no,
Or
it
is
was
just what you purchase?
It was $5 to do the. Basically, they each have their own deals. Like the
Yeah.
black and white one was one graphic for $5.
Okay.
And then usually what they'll do is when you're going to check out, they say you can get the master files for an additional $5. If you want 4 versions of it, pay for an additional $5. But everything's based on a $5 increment. It's called a gig.
Okay.
And but that black and white one cost me $5. But all I got with that was the JPEG. I didn't get the PSD with it. So it's that's what Fiverr's all about. Get all kinds of stuff done for $5. And I'm having a guy do those chalkboard drawings. You ever see those chalkboard videos, Rob?
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
I'm having it tomorrow. It went back and forth the amount of email I went actually in Fiverr, the amount of interactions I've had with this guy back and forth was way beyond what $5 I'd have to pay. I told him, I says, if you need to charge me some extra gigs, you went back and forth with me a couple
You're too cheap.
Yeah, well, that's the way it works. I feel guilty, but that's what they sign up for. So he's making me a chalkboard drawing of what we're trying to instruct people on or try to build as a marketing tool is to tell people how easy it is to use PowerPress in our hosting. Basically, click, upload, grab the file, drag and drop, uploads, and you're done. That's what I'm trying to, and it's going to be like I told him 10, 15 seconds is all I want because that's all it takes is click, drag, drop, it uploads, you're done. So he's going to create a chalkboard of that, and it's, going to be, have some advertising speak in it. We'll see how it turns out. If I'd have asked someone that was doing that as a profession, that's a $400 or $500 job.
Yeah.
Easy. And I'm getting it done for $5.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Totally crazy. Now, I don't know what the quality is.
Yeah.
But for $5,
well, from what I've seen so far, I say that the quality is good. I mean, so if you were to start out this process from scratch, right? So let's say you had a brand new show.
Yep.
You didn't have existing artwork, so it was probably an advantage for them to see what your concept was in an actual piece of art today, right?
Right.
And then they just kind of extended that into other options.
Yep.
But if you were to start out from scratch, how would you see that process?
Just give them
different?
some ideas. You can submit images if you want to send an image of yourself. A lot of people do that. That's why you see so much album art now these days with people that their actual faces in the image in the album art.
Yep.
So send them that. Send them the name of the show idea. Tell them what your show is about, and let them go. And I would. There's 4 or 5 people are doing. I would do a project with each, and then see. And within 3 days, you're going to have, for $20, you're going to have, 4 possible album art choices. And, I'm thinking to myself, this, the potential here for me is, okay, like Marnie was on today. So if I know we're going to have a guest far enough advance, I'll just go and say, hey, here's, we're going to have a show with this guest, maybe send a headshot or something like that, said make me a single file for their particular show, so I could actually put an MP for $5 a show. It would be pretty awesome to have individual album art for every MP3 that's uploaded, because you when people would, depending on where they're seeing that, they would see different instead of having the same album art every time. So for $20 a month, I could almost have fresh album art for every episode in the actual MP3.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great resource, and it looks like that the guys that you were working with kind of understand the podcast medium and being able to create compelling artwork.
Yeah.
Though I would say not all of the artwork that you showed me was really great. So I think you're going to have to be a little picky on it. And
folks, and I've highlighted the folks I've liked so far. I know the 2 fellows that I'm probably going to go back to in the future. There was one that came in for Geek News Central that was really bad. The Geek News Central stuff was not super compelling. Mm-hmm. So I've went back to the person that did the New Media Show art, and I've asked that person to do a GNC round, and I haven't got that back yet. So, that we'll see where that leads, I guess, for a better word. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, I have some, if I just want to throw one of these off album arts into an ID3 tag, not be the same main RSS feed one, but be just for ID3 art, so what? It doesn't have to have the same standard as the other art.
Yeah. But it's great that there's a resource like that, because it's so important for your show to have good artwork. You know?
And it's like this graphic here, Rob, and I did this just for fun. That was $5.
Yeah.
I could have, if I'd have found the right image, I could have done that myself. But just, it's for a few weeks, maybe that'll be a little promotional thing. It'll be on the website, And,
I grabbed that and threw that out into my Twitter feed. So
it's interesting. It's a little eye-catching. It's got a nice-looking woman that's in the picture. So, I'm using some of those, let's be honest. I was trolling a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, Todd, you should pull up the Ask Women's podcast artwork.
All right.
You can see that if you go to podcast1.com /ask-woman. If you want to see some compelling artwork. So we make all of our own artwork at Podcast One.
Whoops. There we go. So
that's it.
Oh, interesting. That's provocative.
Yes. It's a provocative show, so, plus we also own the Loveline show too. So
right.
That's an advantage for that show, is that they're regular guests on Loveline and other, Dr. Drew shows and things like that. So
right.
There's a lot of cross-pollination on relationship shows on our platform.
Yep. And that, for, driving traffic, that definitely works out in the long run.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, I think folks need to realize that not everyone's going to have this level of engagement immediately that Marnie has. I like to see success stories like that, though. It's nice to be able to kind of highlight that from time to time.
Well, I think one of the things, as you look at it into the future of podcasting, is that, and we've talked about this on the show many times, is scale, right?
Right.
Radio today is primarily a local medium,
right?
Podcasting, if you think about it in the bigger picture, is a national, global medium, and that's one of the struggles that I believe that the medium is having right now is that there's lots of listeners that are local, but they're not necessarily listening to local podcasts.
Right.
So in radio, I think we need to really realize that radio is still the kingpin here.
Yep.
There's billions of dollars being spent in advertising. There's still hundreds of millions of people listening to broadcast radio every day. It's not like it's dead, and I think as podcasters, I think we tend to think that, oh yeah, radio's dead, and because we're biased because we want to see podcasting be bigger than radio. But I think it's going to take 10 years before podcasting is bigger than radio. So it's an interesting kind of tension that exists, and my job today is kind of trying to live in that world of being in both places, and it's not always an easy place to be. It's podcasting is not the same as radio, but to try and bring those two together can be a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I had a vendor in L.A. that was asking for New York, L.A., and San Francisco specifically, and he had some shows in mind, and we went and pulled the numbers, and I'm like, well, let me give you the numbers for California and New York, and I gave him the numbers, and then I said, okay, here's the numbers for the rest of the world. And, it was like 3% of his audience was New York and L.A., and 97% of it was the rest of the country. And this guy was like, I only want to reach the New York and L.A. people. I'm like, but I'm kind of like, so my response back was, I would buy your product, and I live in Hawaii. Why am I not a customer?
Yeah.
Why am I not a potential customer?
Yeah.
And we're not, because you live in LA doesn't mean that the rest of the country is out in the boonies.
Yeah.
So to me, it was that struck me as like, what? Why wouldn't I would buy your product. So it's, I think people that live in the big cities too have this centric view that, and maybe it's not, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think they think the rest of the country's behind them in fashion and trends and everything else. But it generally not that far behind.
Yeah, I would think so. So, I think that there's definitely a place for local shows, but
Right.
but until on-demand audio reaches critical mass at the same level that broadcast has in any given market, and that will also be very compelling for national shows too. When we have just more people in any given city listening to on-demand audio, then all boats rise at that point, right? I mean, local as well as national and global shows get bigger, and I know that's what we've been talking about a long time on this show is how can we grow the number of overall listeners, right?
Yeah.
Because I see that as the key to the future success of this medium. It just has to happen, and I'm not sure it's just going to take time, I think.
Well, I think there's the volume of listeners, but they're not listening to enough programming. I think we're hitting 65 million, something that measure track per month of uniques. So, the audience is significant.
Well, didn't the Edison folks do a research that just came out here fairly recently showing that the average podcast listener, once they've been engaged in the medium, usually subscribe or listen to 6 programs or 6, I'm not quite sure if it's 6 shows or 6.
Yeah, probably 6 programs, yeah.
6 programs or 6, on the episode side. I'm not quite sure what that is. They're oftentimes unclear when they say 6 shows, whether that's an episode or individual series or not. But
I can't imagine it would be 6 episodes. It would have to be, I would think, would be 6 shows.
Yeah.
But
yeah, because that's like 1.5 or 1.25 shows per week, or one or 1.25 episodes per week.
Well, if you look at let's assume that the average commute's 20 minutes, and that's, I think, what it is nationwide. Here in Hawaii, we don't have that average. But so 40-minute commute round trip per day times, 5 days, what is that? That's 200 minutes. So that's 3 hours and 20 minutes, I guess, of listening time that would be in the car, where probably people are primarily listening. So can they get 6 shows in during commute? And then let's think about maybe a couple days at the gym. So that's, a couple more hours.
Todd, so did you see the video presentation that was put up by Tom Webster just this last week?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, he put a visual and an audio, kind of like a YouTube video about the research that was put out here just in the last couple weeks. If you go to my Twitter page, I have a link to it. We could probably play it here. It's only a couple minutes long.
Okay,
but
and
it might
probably
be,
as if it's on YouTube, I can't.
You can't play it if it's on.
Yeah,
if it's on YouTube at all.
Yeah, they'll shut it down. Let's see here.
That's too bad.
Yeah, the copyright stuff. Share of ear. Well, that's interesting. Let me bring this up. Can I bring this up without playing it? Yeah, I can. Share of ear, one day reach, percentage of people reported listening to each audio type on their listening day. So let's look here. AM, FM, own music, internet radio, Sirius XM, TV music, podcast. So they say we only have 5% of shared ear.
Well, no, it was, yeah, exactly. That's the one I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Let me scroll ahead a little bit and see what else is in this presentation. Or does he stick on the same slide? Okay, let's...
Which the conclusion that he came to is that for people that are listening to podcasts in comparison to people that are listening to radio,
right,
it's very close. Right?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's why the conversation I'm focusing on is growing the amount of podcast listeners.
Right.
Because once you've been converted into a podcast listener,
right, you don't go back. Are you?
Your consumption exceeds your radio consumption.
Right. Interesting that they're working with Triton.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah. That's interesting in more than one way, but I can't talk about that.
No, I know. Yeah, I can. Triton is an interesting entity, which doesn't get talked about much in the podcasting realm.
Okay, what else here? Yeah, so this will be worth listening. People have to go listen to it. I just can't play it in the live stream. It's they'll pull us. They'll plug. They're brutal. I don't dare play any YouTube. Almost any video content is I've had to change my regular show, or my weekly show, because if I play a YouTube,
can you show like the screenshot that's?
Yeah, I can probably do that without.
Because that has a breakdown of what we're talking about here.
Without getting the ban hammer put upon. So let me bring this up. If we lose you online, there's a screenshot.
Could you just play the audio of it? Or do they capture that too?
It's Rob. It's not worth it, because once you go on the band,
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what it's basically saying here, for those of you that are listening, we'll have it in the show notes so you can go check it out for sure, is that share of ear, 1 day reach, percentage of... Yeah, I have to listen to it. So it must be it's the devil's in the details, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's also... Yeah, I linked to it in my Twitter... in my Twitter account too.
So do you think
podcasts are bigger than you might think.
So it's actually good news then in the long run.
Yeah, it's doing a kind of apples to apples comparison between podcasts and radio, and what the actual usage is for people that that are users of podcasts.
Gotcha.
And because it's the tendency in the research that is typically presented is they always look at overall consumption of audio, right?
Right.
And so the music side tends to skew the numbers really weird, and it makes podcasts look insignificant, but in reality, it's more significant,
right, for
spoken word content. So.
Very cool. Hey, we're already an hour and a half in here.
Are we? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wow. Where did that 45 minutes go?
Yeah.
So let's wrap here for the day.
Okay.
What do you have anything planned on the tap for next week?
I don't have a guest booked yet.
Okay.
But I will let you know as soon as I do.
All right.
And I'm going to try and get further booked out so we can post it to the site, the new website.
Yeah.
So people can plan and things like that.
But just as a reminder, we are at newmediashow.com now, and the site is living on its own. And actually need to get a analytics counter on there to look at the actual website traffic. I haven't done that yet, but I will do so. But you can email us here at the show, Todd or Rob at newmediashow.com is the place to send the email to. And we look forward to hearing your feedback. And if you have a guest suggestion, please don't be afraid to send us one. Also, definitely, if you appreciated our guest today, definitely go over and subscribe to their show. And you can find Marnie at AskWomenPodcast.com, or you can find her at WingGirlMethod.com as well as her other hat that she wears there.
Yeah, or just go to podcast1.com and you can listen to the show right there.
So, Rob, another great guest. Thanks for doing that. And for everyone else, thanks for being here. And we appreciate your time with us. And spread the word about the show. Definitely go over to podcasternews.com as well to watch for news in the podcasting space. We're doing great traffic over there and having great articles. But till next time, everyone take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay, let me shut off YouTube. Those of you on YouTube, see you later.